Mom.
Is it weird if I answer this on the podcast?
No, go ahead, dude.
Hello?
Hey,
Hey,
Mom.
Yes, I'm at work. We are currently recording an episode of the podcast. You are live on air. Oh, it's all good. Home tomorrow?
I can hear her apologizing.
What's that?
I want to let you know, future Miss Wiswell, this is not acceptable.
Hey, we in. What's going on?
What's up, guys? Welcome to the show.
Welcome to the Chris and Kyle Show. He's Chris. I'm Kyle. This is Spoilers. Fantastic Beasts. The Crimes of Grindelwald. That's it.
That's it. You gave the shortened version.
No, that's what it really is.
Did they change it?
Yeah, they changed
did it
it.
used to be?
It was originally Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them 2, The Crimes of Grindelwald. And they shortened it.
Rightly so.
Yeah,
I'm
right.
glad
So
they did.
for sure. It was way too long. Some nonsense. So, let's jump right into this and get some deets. Directed by David Yates, the same man who directed the previous film, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, is set to direct the rest of the films in this five-ilogy. What do you call a five movie? What's the word for trilogy?
So
Five.
I don't-
Pentology?
Pentology? Sounds good.
Pentology.
I know 2 is duology.
Yeah, I think it's pentology.
What's 4?
Quattro.
Just quattro? You're not even gonna put an ology to it?
Squareology.
Quattrology?
It's probably quadrology. We need to-
Quadrilogy?
Quadrilogy, maybe. We need to use these words more because I want to know them. Yeah, he also directed Harry Potter movies 5 through 8 in the franchise. Other than that, I think he just did like The Legend of Tarzan. He's not really known for much else outside of Harry Potter.
Yeah, that and a whole bunch of TV, right?
Yeah, a lot of TV stuff. Written by herself, J.K. Rowling.
Who's that?
She is the author of the Cormoran Strike novels, though she uses a pseudonym. That's how
Who's
you.
Cormoran Strike?
It's her other book series she writes. She uses like a what's the dude? She uses a dude's name as her name. She has a pseudonym, a pen name of a dude. Robert Galbraith, I think the name is. I think I'm getting that right. So the Cormoran Strike novels by Robert Galbraith is actually J.K. Rowling writing an adult mystery series.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But she's, I mean, a little bit more famous for writing the Harry Potter books.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's like straight from the source, huh?
Yeah, which I think is pretty cool because she writes the scripts by herself. I think that's kind of interesting.
Why do you find that interesting?
Just because it's a different medium, the fact that she doesn't have a professional screenwriter
Like, yeah.
doing it along with her, I think is interesting. My
Okay.
mom is calling me. All right, so synopsis. The IMDb synopsis sucked, so I went to Rotten Tomatoes and got a longer one.
Do you have both of them?
No,
No,
but I
you're just
remember.
gonna-
I can tell you the IMDb one.
What is it?
The next installment of the Fantastic Beasts franchise from J.K. Rowling's Wizarding World as we follow Newt Scamander, Magizoologist.
Something like that. It was really lame.
That's like if someone
most
didn't know the
generic
movie.
thing.
If
Yeah.
someone didn't know the movie at all and were to guess what the synopsis of the
yeah,
movie were.
yeah, exactly. So this one is a little bit more in depth. It says, at the end of the first film, the powerful dark wizard Gellert Grindelwald was captured by the Magical Congress of the United States of America with the help of Newt Scamander. But, making good on his threat, Grindelwald escaped custody and has set about gathering followers, most unsuspecting of his true agenda, to raise pureblood wizards up to rule over all non-magical beings. In an effort to thwart Grindelwald's plans, Albus Dumbledore enlists his former student Newt Scamander, who agrees to help, unaware of the dangers that lie ahead. Lines are drawn as love and loyalty are tested, even among the truest friends and family, in an increasingly divided wizarding world.
That's a very long synopsis.
Yeah, it's really long.
Like, there needs to be a happy medium there. I feel like that's way too long.
Yep.
Anyways, so what confuses me, right? So he was captured by the Magical Congress
The
of
Makusa.
the Makusa.
Magical. Wait, I got you.
Magical
Magical
Congress
Congress of the United States of America.
Right? But at the beginning of
It said American
Ministry of Magic.
I think that was for Dumbos like you, who would have been like, "What's Makusa?" if they wrote it. because it's essentially just the Ministry of Magic for America.
But
It's just its own.
first off, don't say dummies like me, because I noticed at the beginning of the movie,
All
I was
right,
like,
good for
that
you.
wasn't the name of the Ministry
All
of
right,
Magic
good
in
for you,
America.
dog. I think your casual moviegoer would have been confused if they put Makusa on the screen. And putting Magical Congress of the United States of America is kind of long.
Right. Okay.
I think that's the best explanation I can think of as to why they did that. It's just an easier line to draw.
Yeah, it distracted me for a
Yeah,
couple
yeah. I thought the
seconds.
same thing. I was like, that's kind of weird that they.
You want to
did
run
that.
through the cast?
Yeah, for sure. So I put a bunch of people in here. I basically up front, the plot of this movie is pretty thick. There's a lot that happens, and there's a lot of people involved. So I basically included everyone important that's there for the final confrontation. Those because they're basically the people we follow throughout the film. The lead is obviously Eddie Redmayne as Newt Scamander, 2-time Oscar nominee, 1-time winner. Known for Les Mis, The Theory of Everything, which he won his Oscar for, and the Danish Girl, which his other nomination was for. Eddie Redmayne's, pretty accomplished dude. Catherine Waterston as Porpentina, aka Tina Goldstein. You might know her from Inherent Vice, Alien Covenant. She was in Steve Jobs. Yeah. All-star Dan Fogler as Jacob Kowalski.
What else have you seen Dan Fogler
He's
in?
not in a lot. I put Balls of Fury on here. He's not known from a lot of movies. I specifically recognize him the most from the show The Goldbergs,
Okay.
where he plays their uncle, and he's
All right.
like he's crazy.
He's also in Take Me Home Tonight. Have you ever seen that movie?
I don't think so.
With Topher Grace?
No.
Yeah.
He's in a lot of like raunchy comedies.
Yeah,
it looks
raunchy, like goofy shit, like where he plays like
he's
the
very funny in these movies.
yeah.
I mean, he's funny in general, but in the Fantastic Beasts movies, he's very funny. The next one I've got is Alison Sudol as Queenie Goldstein. What do you know about her?
Queenie Goldstein?
About Alison Sudol?
Not much.
That's because she's not been acting for very long. She has basically no real acting credits outside of a couple, spot things. She's a singer. She's been a singer for like her whole career. She recently started acting. She is known as a Fine Frenzy as a singer, and she has 4 albums.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's cool.
pretty interesting. Then we've got Warner Brothers' favorite actor in the world, Ezra Miller, as Credence Barebone. I say the joke about the Warner Brothers thing because while being in the Wizarding World franchise, he's also in their DC universe. He plays the Flash in Justice League. And he was probably most known before he kind of blew up in these big roles from The Perks of Being a Wallflower, which he was ironically in with Emma Watson, drawing connections. I don't know if it's ironic, but
That's not. Yeah, it's coincidental.
It's coincidental, yeah. Then I've got Zoe Kravitz as Lita Lestrange. She is, yes, Lenny Kravitz's daughter, if you're wondering. And she was in Mad Max Fury Road. She was in X-Men First Class. I feel like she's been in a bunch of stuff, but I can't.
Lenny Kravitz and Lisa Bonet's daughter.
Yes.
Don't forget
Then I've got Callum Turner as Theseus Scamander. He was in War and Peace. He was in Green Room. Not super well-known guy that I know of outside of that. Then I've got William Nadilam, Nadylam. He's French. As Yusuf Kama, he was in some French stuff. He's basically just got a bunch of French films on his resume, which I think is kind of cool because he was a French dude in the movie too, so that's kind of fun. Then I've got Claudia Kim as Nagini, which we'll get into it, but that ended up not meaning anything in this movie. She was in Avengers Age of Ultron. She was in The Dark Tower. She was in the show Marco Polo on Netflix. She is a pretty famous Korean actress, but not as famous in the States. Then we've got our 2 biggest headliners, probably. The controversial Johnny Depp as Gellert Grindelwald. Johnny Depp's got 3 Oscar nominations. Probably most famous for being Jack Sparrow in Pirates of the Caribbean. He was in Sweeney Todd, and Finding Neverland was his other Oscar nomination.
Yeah, if you don't know who Johnny
If you don't
Depp
know who
is.
Johnny Depp is, why are you listening to this show? What do you like about this? And then the last one, which I'm so proud of, making the decision for them, is Jude Law as Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore. Jude Law, 2-time Oscar nominee, known for The Talented Mr. Ripley. He was in The Grand Budapest Hotel, another nom for Cold Mountain, and he was in Sherlock Holmes with Robert Downey Jr., and he's going to be in the upcoming Marvel film, Captain Marvel. That's your cast. Big cast, a lot of characters.
All right, let's get into the actual movie.
Yeah. Can I just, as a precedent, can we set aside any talk about the twist thing for later so it doesn't convolute talking about the movie?
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? All right. So we'll talk about the twist later because
All right.
it's heavy.
Okay.
Okay.
So what would you rate this movie?
Like on the Chris and Kyle show scale?
On the Chris and Kyle, on the tcaks scale, what do you have it as?
I thought it was really good. I really enjoyed it. And I think my personal love of the franchise would bump it up more than maybe what it is, but I'd probably give it around an 8-ish. Okay. Something like that.
Yeah, I would say maybe a 6 or a 7.
Yeah, and I'm gonna bump it higher just
like on an IMDb scale, I'd say it's a solid 7.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's recommendable.
Certainly.
Like, there isn't really as much. There isn't as much cons as there is like, oh, maybe that could have been better kind of stuff.
Okay.
I would say like, it doesn't. Yeah. Like there isn't as much bad stuff.
I would say the big thing for me
is.
would be that it feels to me like J.K. Rowling is still, her ideas are still meant for books. There's so much going on in this movie that it's hard to fit into a movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's just hard. There's so many characters. There's so many plot threads. And on top of that, she's laying the groundwork for a 5-film series. So there's just all these things that are left kind of open-ended. And I kind of look at it the same way I look at the Star Wars movies now in terms of, the main thread Star Wars movies, where when you go into the next installment, you kind of have to expect to leave not completely fulfilled, having more questions and not having everything answered. Because at the end of the day, I think when you look back on the Fantastic Beasts movies, in 15, 20 years, I think you're going to look back on them as a whole and not as individuals. Mm-hmm. Because that's going to be the story. The story is going to be what happens over all 5 movies more than what happens in any one movie. Does that make sense?
No, I completely agree with you. That like it's hard judging the individual quality of each movie when you don't have the entire whole.
Exactly.
And yeah, like you said, like her writing is sort of meant for books. I mean, she still wrote a fucking incredible movie.
Yeah.
But it is convoluted. That is the only con that I have for this movie.
There's just so much.
Yeah, there's parts that are dense, and if you're not really paying attention,
if you're
you'll
not
miss a lot of stuff
on top of everything. You're gonna get confused.
Yeah.
When you get to that final confrontation kind of scene in the graveyard when everyone shows up in the same place,
like right before the graveyard, pretty much. There was like a lot of exposition and backstory there, which like kind of I didn't like as much. If like only one character did it, then that would be fine. But like they had 2 characters doing it, which kind of it made sense in the moment because of the context of the story.
You mean when Yusuf was telling about how he was related to Lita, and then Lita had to explain what happened to the baby, her brother that was assumed dead, who may or may not have been Credence. It's very, very
there's a lot of confusing. There's a lot of details.
Yeah, and it's weird because like now that I've seen it, I understand it. I get what happened. I understand the connections with everything. But if you are not locked in while you watch this movie, you're going to get
especially
lost
through the first time. I think that if you I think it's like multiple viewings are probably going to reward a lot more things. There's probably going to be a lot of things that went unnoticed. For me, especially if you're not a huge Harry Potter nerd.
What's that?
But yeah, I'd give it like a 6 or a 7.
Cool. And that's like your biggest con would be how convoluted. I have like a weird hitch with the word convoluted, because when you say something is convoluted, to me that means that if you sat down and examined it, it still wouldn't make sense. But to me, if you do that with this movie, it makes sense.
No, I don't think that's what convoluted.
That's not what convoluted means.
No, that's not how I use it. At least when I say convoluted, I just mean that it's very plotty.
Yeah, it's certainly very plotty.
And there's a lot of threads of plot that you sort of have to weave together in order to understand what else going
that's
on.
certainly true. Maybe I have this weird catch up with the term.
Just
it
because,
makes me think that something doesn't flow right,
Right.
if you broke it down.
No. Like I don't think. No, you can have something that completely follows a logical progression.
So would you say
with
like
your
is
narrative.
the Dark Knight convoluted because of everything that's happening in it?
I would say that there's so much happening in it but like the difference with a Dark Knight is I feel like the stakes are still understood even if you don't understand the plot lines of it, right? Okay. So when you have like there's so much emotional context that you have to kind of know with Fantastic Beasts 2, that like the information that the characters give you, especially in that specific point when you have those two characters that give their backstory and they explain all these sort of like elaborate like, oh, you're my half sister, and then he married another person, and then he had a kid with that person, and that person got
he sucked. He was horrible.
Kid got switched with another baby,
on a boat, and then the boat sank.
Hold on.
Yeah, there's a lot.
It was just a lot of information. I don't remember there being any points in the Dark Knight where like a lot of the stuff in the Dark Knight was like, oh, we have to go get this person for this reason.
Well, I think maybe
the reason there was like kind of hard to understand, but you still know you have to go get this person.
Yeah.
You know?
Do you think maybe that just the pacing is better through the Dark Knight?
It's longer, right? I don't think Fantastic
This movie's
Beasts,
over 2 hours. The Fantastic Beasts was
Dark Knight's
movie.
like 2.5
I think they're both
hours.
like close to 2.5.
I
think this was like 2 hours and 10 minutes.
I would say
maybe.
it's distributed better.
Yeah, maybe pacing is the wrong word. Maybe
isn't-
distribution of information.
Like I don't remember any. There is a lot of exposition and shit, and I don't know. It feels like it's paced better.
Yeah.
In the Dark Knight specifically.
Yeah, we are hit with almost all of the information right before the climax in terms of the mystery of figuring out who Credence is, which is weird because in terms of overall storyline, as an audience, I think that's not the thing that we care about the most, who is Credence. I think the thing that we care about the most is stopping Grindelwald, right?
True, but you can't really like exclude those plot lines from each other. You know, they can't
That's
exist in a
true.
vacuum.
Because
in a
Credence
vacuum.
is so important to what Grindelwald wants to do.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's true. I guess it just kind of feels like this being such a 5-movie series that we're only 2 movies into. It's almost like, well, if they could just stop Grindelwald now, the rest of the movies wouldn't even matter. You know what I mean? If you could either convince Credence to join Dumbledore's side or just actually succeed at capturing Grindelwald now, the rest of the movies wouldn't even have to happen. But we know that in the final movie, we're going to lead up to the 1947 duel between Dumbledore and Grindelwald. We know that's going to happen.
Okay. Do you know that's going to happen? I don't think everybody knows that's going to happen. The informed audience member knows that whatever you just said, the Dumbledore is going to fight.
Dumbledore in the Harry Potter series, in the books and in the movies of Harry Potter, one of Dumbledore's most famous achievements, it's on his chocolate frog card.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it says that he's famous for discovering 12 uses of dragon's blood. He's famous for his work with the Philosopher's Stone with Nicolas Flamel, and he's famous for his defeat of the Dark Wizard Grindelwald. It's like his biggest achievement. He got a Order of Merlin first class for it. I am being such a nerd right now.
That's fine, dude.
I know.
We need it.
Yeah. Did you like the first one or this one more?
I would say that they're different.
They're very different.
They're really different, and I would say I probably like this one more.
I definitely like this one more.
I like this one more. It's the first one was a lot. It wasn't as plotting or convoluted.
Much lighter.
It was very
It was very much dip your toe in the water of what we're getting into. I think that, as I keep saying, looking back at the whole when this is all over, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them is going to almost feel like a prequel, sort of, to the prequel in a way. Like I think the main plot of the series is almost untouched. in the first movie.
Right.
The first movie was very much just setting up why Credence is important and what he can do. And we don't even know that Grindelwald is a part of anything until the very end.
Mm-hmm.
And Dumbledore's not even in it. And I think Dumbledore's going to be super important in the rest of the movies.
Right. My other con with this movie, like I said this coming out of the movie, like I'm not a huge fan of the Johnny Depp casting.
Yeah.
That there was a lot of controversy. You brought this up earlier. The controversy of Johnny Depp being casted in this movie after he was accused
of
domestic violence
with Amber Heard.
Yeah, by his
and they've
ex,
been divorced
Amber
since
Heard.
then, and all this stuff.
Yeah, and I don't know everything about it.
Yeah.
I'm not well versed in the entire controversy.
Yeah.
But that wasn't my problem.
I think what we do know is that one,
Johnny
Depp's like a crazy dude.
Yeah.
And two, I know that J.K. Rowling was confronted about this because J.K. Rowling is a very outspoken person when it comes to a lot of progressive ideas. You know, diversity in her stuff. She's even been accused herself of shoehorning progressive stuff into her stories. Like, they'll say that you didn't make Harry Potter diverse until after it was done because you went back and you said things like, "Oh yeah, Dumbledore was gay the whole time," or Hermione can be black in the play. It doesn't matter. It doesn't affect the character anyway. Things that I think people kind of overreact to a little bit. I think that people like hate JK because of these things. There's some people like that.
Right.
People that love Harry Potter but feel like JK Rowling is like belittling them because she included these things in a reverse way.
Yeah.
But to me, did Dumbledore being gay? I mean, the books and movies are from Harry's point of view. How would that have been a natural thing? I understand why it wasn't included, and I think that going forward, we're gonna see that. I think in this movie we see that for sure.
Yeah,
it's already being laid down.
Yeah, there's homosexual undertones.
That his relationship with Grindelwald and what that's gonna be, going into this story. But the thing with Johnny Depp is, yes, a lot of people were upset that she okayed his casting as the character. But you were saying your problem isn't with the controversy because, like you said, we're not fully versed in everything that happened. We don't know.
Yeah,
everything, but you just didn't find him menacing, right?
Yeah, I didn't find him menacing. Like I like Johnny Depp as an actor. I think fucking Jack Sparrow is as classic as you can get, as iconic as you can get with a character, and fucking super fun. I like the first Pirates movie,
first and second
would probably be like in my top 20. Fucking favorite movies. I really like that movie.
Awesome.
Probably one of the greatest like theater experiences I had too. But yeah, like I don't think that he can't play someone menacing.
Sweeney Todd was menacing.
Specifically as Grindelwald, I don't feel like I feel like he's supposed to be more scary than he is, and I'm not talking. And we talked about like superficiality of terror.
Yeah.
And I don't think that has to exist. But I wasn't very like, I didn't feel seduced at all by his character. I didn't feel like he was very, like he was drawing me in at all. I was just like, oh,
and that's
Johnny
important
Depp
because
doing
that's supposed to be sort of the factor of Grindelwald is his seductive allure as a leader. The way he's able to, he can convince people that his ideas are right, and that the greater good thing is the way that all of wizard kind should be, sort of enforcing their will on the world. And I think a big con in terms of sort of general appeal, what a lot of people have been saying about the movie is a lot of people didn't buy into Queenie switching sides. Because they just don't think that it fits the character, and two, maybe they just weren't convinced enough by the arguments. I buy into it. And I think we talked about this too after we watched the movie. I think we buy into it as a story piece. We find it very compelling. The idea that she can be allured to this side because of her desire to be with Jacob, who's a muggle, and in America is illegal for her to be with.
Yeah, I
think it's very compelling as a story piece, and maybe the execution of it was just a little off. I agree,
and I would say that that the execution of it was off for two reasons. One, I wasn't enticed by Johnny Depp's the way that he sold his side to her, it wasn't there for me, even though all of the reasons for it being there.
Yeah, it checked the boxes, but it didn't.
It wasn't there.
Yeah.
Like it just.
But it didn't wrap the present.
Yeah. And two, her switching sides during the climax, I didn't agree with. Like her doing it like in front.
Yeah,
of,
is it mostly because?
What's his name? Kowalski?
Jacob Kowalski is literally like, no, don't do that.
Yeah.
Like, and you would think that as someone who's in love with if you're in love with him, him pointing out the fact that joining this dude who literally just talked about how Muggles are lesser than, he was like, they're not lesser than, they're different. But whatever, he clearly has a lower opinion of people like Jacob.
Right.
And she's okay with that because selfishly, what Grindelwald wants will give her the opportunity to get what she wants in the end.
Yeah, and J.K. Rowling, I watched a video of her talking about Grindelwald and his philosophies, and how alluring and seductive he was as a person. And she was like, if he's somebody that if you look into what he's saying more, it starts to fall apart.
Yeah.
But if you're not paying attention and if you're paying more attention to your emotions, that you'll be incredibly seduced.
That makes a lot of sense.
The things that he can say. And
Queen's an extremely emotional person.
Yeah. And on paper, it seemed like that made a lot of sense. Like what J.K. Rowling was getting across. I just don't feel like it was.
It's like it just fell short. It's not bad. It just falls short.
Yeah,
like really buying into it.
I wasn't distracted by his performance in any way. I was just like,
do you think that if I'm not even talking about the casting, but if they didn't just do so much weirdness to him, if he didn't look so odd, do you think it would help find him more like seductive and alluring? Because he's distracting looking. He's got the weird eye. He's got the weird blonde hair that Johnny Depp's like, they make him so pale.
Maybe.
Do you think if he looked like
if it was just Johnny Depp,
maybe, yeah.
Would Grindelwald be more enticing? I don't know.
Or if they just casted a normal blonde person, you might say, I don't know if I fully bought into Johnny Depp's performance, and you could debate who would you rather see in that role. I don't know.
I literally tried to recast that role, and I was like, I can't really find anybody in my head. And the actors that I was like, oh, that would be really cool. I was like, oh, but that kind of character has already been done before. Somebody that I thought of was Michael Sheen, and I was like, oh no, like fucking, he kind of played a character like this in Underworld. So yeah, I mean, like there was a lot of times when I was like just scrolling through IMDb looking for names, and like I was like, oh, like that kind of fits the age, and they would bring a lot more of a menacing.
Yeah, I think the age makes it a little bit more difficult because there's guys like like a Chris Pine or something that I think would be fun to see take a twist like that as a role, but he's too young.
True,
but
you also have prosthetics. I mean,
that's true.
Just because they're young,
but I think in terms of just. I think they wanted a name.
Right.
I think that was a big thing with Grindelwald. It's because, I mean, really, when Eddie Redmayne was casted, I think it was right after his first Oscar nomination, maybe. I don't know. He wasn't as, he wasn't as big, the Eddie Redmayne he is today.
Right.
And outside of that, Johnny Depp's the only big name in the movie, in the first movie, and he was a surprise. Colin Farrell was in the first movie, but he was playing Johnny Depp's character. But outside of that, like I said, Alison Sewell was a singer. Dan Fogler, kind of not really known for much outside of raunchy comedies. What's her name that plays Tina? Not known for much until after Fantastic Beasts. She got the Alien Covenant role and some other stuff. None of them are very well-known actors, so I think that the one kind of big actor they wanted to land was for Grindelwald. And Johnny Depp's obviously a huge actor.
Grindelwald and Dumbledore.
Well, I was going to say that coming into the second movie, then they had to then counter that with who can play opposite that. And I think I've said before, Jude Law was my dream casting for the character. And I will say, I think even though he isn't given a ton to do in this movie, it's still, kind of outside looking in at Dumbledore as a character. I still think he's really good.
I agree.
And I can tell that going forward, we're going to get some meaty stuff out of
Dumbledore.
out of Jude Law's Dumbledore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently, he just sat down with J.K. Rowling.
She told him a bunch of secrets.
Yeah.
Oh, dude.
That she's like
I'm
never
so
told
jealous
anybody
of that.
before, and I
Yeah.
was like even other people that have played Dumbledore.
Yeah, which is interesting.
Oh,
Well, I
who's
mean,
like
how
Richard
did
Harris
how
and
did it
somebody
affect Richard Harris and Michael Gambon?
Right.
These little details. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I know that that's something that she's kind of famous for doing with the actors. I know that she sat down with Alan Rickman at the first movie and told him all about Snape's history.
Right.
So he knew for the whole 8-movie run before anyone in the world knew, that he was in love with Harry's mom and stuff all in the past. Like she's known for sharing these details with actors so that they can tap into that for their performances, which I think is really cool.
It's a huge plus to have someone like her who like is obviously the source of this material, but also everything is so well fleshed out because she's lived in that world for so long.
Yeah.
So like even the stuff that didn't make its way to page,
and she
knows about.
she goes so deep into, she'll go into side characters that you don't even think matter. Like I'll say, okay, for example, I said earlier, I hinted that the character of Nagini was kind of useless in this movie.
Right.
We were hyped up with that one trailer where they revealed her name.
Right.
And the fact that she's a maledictus and she can turn into the snake, and is she the snake that ends up with Voldemort in the Harry Potter series? I know there's going to be more to the character down the line, and I know that J.K. has oodles of knowledge about where she came from and where she's going. I'm confident in knowing that. So I'm not upset by the fact that there's not a lot for her to do in this movie because I know her moment's going to come. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I just think, I think it's just a juggling act of what's important now and what's going to be important later, and that's hard to do.
And like that's one thing that I find kind of interesting about these movies, the Fantastic Beasts movies, because there's a lot of references to the Harry Potter universe and stuff like that, and it's not. There's a lot of times when you watch reboots and prequels and stuff like if I can. Predator, the most recent Predator reboot.
The Predator.
The Predator, the sequel. Sorry, not reboot. There are constant references to the original Predator as well as Predator
stuff like
2.
that.
Yeah. And it's literally only there to reference the original one.
Yeah, it's like scratching an itch. It's like, just to remind you,
right?
Don't forget Arnold.
Yeah.
Don't forget where this came from.
Yeah, it's the member berry culture.
Yeah. Remember, get to the chopper.
And I feel like JK does a really good job of she'll do that. She'll throw out those bones and those member berries.
Well, like having the student in the flashback with Dumbledore's name is McLagan. Right. It means nothing. And I giggled, and you were like, why does that matter?
Yeah.
Because it's just a fun connection to the world.
Yeah. So sometimes she'll throw out those member berries, but like a lot of those can end up sprouting into different plot lines and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like what you said with Nagini. Nagini isn't just a reference, I don't think. I think
it's going to be important.
With the upcoming 3 movies that are going to come after this one was released, that she's going to go more into Nagini. There's going to be more. Do you think that they're going to bring Nicholas Flamel?
Nicolas Flamel?
Yeah.
Do I think he'll be in it more?
Yeah. Or do you think that he's...
I don't know. He was another... He wasn't really important to this movie outside of they stayed in his house. And then he showed up at the end to help them. It was kind of like he was thrown in there.
Right.
And I don't think he has to be important going forward. I think he could be.
No, I agree. But the uncertainty of those bones that she throws to you is kind of what.
And there were some
me.
question marks, like what was that book he was taught? There's things that I think she needs to tie up.
Right.
In terms of just kind of fan service. Why include that weird scene where he talks to the people
They have
in
to
the
reference
book?
that like later on.
Yeah,
right?
like we kind of have to figure out what that was and why that was able to convince him to do the right thing. And yeah, it's kind of a weird. But like I keep saying, it's something where if you took this movie in a vacuum, you'd be like, why was Nagini in this movie? Why was Nicolas Flamel in this movie? Why are these things? And in the end, I think it's all going to make sense. And you just have to be patient. I had another kind of parallel thought to the new Star Wars trilogy, not only with the idea of waiting for the whole story to be over before you think about it, sort of critically as a whole, But I kind of find the character of Credence to be kind of similar to Kylo Ren in a way. They're kind of playing the same instrument, kind of the idea of someone who is vulnerable enough to be swayed in both directions, and I think that's fun. I have gone on record and will continue to go on record that saying I think Kylo Ren is the best character in Star Wars. I love Kylo Ren.
In all of Star Wars?
Yeah. He's my favorite Star Wars character in terms of a combination of performance and the way I'm drawn to the character. Like, I think Han Solo is the coolest Star Wars character. Harrison Ford's Han Solo specifically.
Right.
Like, if you go back and watch, episode 5, he's like the sexiest man that ever existed. But I think in terms of like the way I'm drawn to the character and I really want to know what's going to happen and I'm just really invested in the character's journey, I think that Kylo Ren is, in my opinion, the best character in Star Wars.
I mean, Finn is my favorite.
I love Finn too, but yeah.
He's my favorite out of the most recent Star Wars. I really like Kylo. A lot of people they hate Kylo Ren.
People hate him.
I think that there was
he's whiny.
There was a lot of like reveals and stupid stuff that I don't feel like was well executed, especially within the first, within Force Awakens. As far as like character development stuff and the reveal of like who Kylo Ren was beneath the mask didn't have a lot of payoff, and I feel like the discomfort that people had in seeing that he was just a kid like was
See, I like that.
People misappropriated that as like that weirdness as like, oh, this is stupid. See, I'm
drawn to that. That's what I'm talking about. Like the sort of the vulnerability of the character is what really draws me into it.
And and I agree. And a lot of people want
of Darth Vader, like an iconic, scary villain.
That they want someone like super powerful.
Yeah.
Which I think both can be compelling.
Yeah, they can both be good, but
compelling.
They already did Darth Vader. If you're gonna, I think those same people would complain to you that the Force Awakens rehashed Star Wars. They would complain about that while also complaining that Kylo Ren isn't Darth Vader. It's silly.
Right. But you could still make a menacing a threat of a antagonist, without doing Darth Vader again. Look at a myriad of like fucking Norman Bates is menacing in a completely different way than Darth Vader is. But anyways, we were talking about Kylo Ren.
I was connecting it to Credence's character.
Okay, Credence's character. I like Credence. He got less screen time in this movie than he did in the first one.
He's a weird kind of case study on screen time to story importance.
Yeah.
Cuz he in both movies doesn't get a lot. In the first movie, we kind of visit him occasionally while Percival Graves, Colin Farrell's character, who's actually Gellert Grindelwald in disguise, is trying to get him to find the Obscurus for him. And in this movie, we kind of visit him occasionally while everyone's looking for him. And all we get from him is that we know he's looking for his parents. He wants to know who his mother was. And we get the one scene with the caretaker who brought him to America. But outside of that, there's not a lot of Credence in either movie. I think that's interesting because of how important he is to the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I'm talking about sort of the vulnerability of the character, and the 5 movies could go by and Credence could end up being a good guy or bad guy, and either way I would be interested and simultaneously surprised and not surprised. Does that make sense?
Right.
And I feel the same way about Kylo Ren.
So yeah, I feel like they both are super similar as far as they could go either way.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like Kylo is someone that like both sides are sort of like trying to fight for? Like they're trying to like, because
I think Credence in the second movie Rey fought for Kylo.
So
they're not exact parallels. I'm just drawing a similarity between.
No. I agree with you there. I really like this scene with his caretaker, and like she like gives him a hug and stuff like that. It was just like a really emotional moment, and it showed.
Well, I think Ezra Miller's an amazing actor.
I agree.
And even though he doesn't have a lot to do, I think he makes the most of what he's given. But yeah, I agree. I really liked that scene.
Were you distracted at all by like the nerd necking of both Eddie Redmayne and Ezra Miller, like in their performances?
The what was the term?
Nerd necking. So like
because they're nerds, they kind of.
So like literally, they both like, kind
of. No, I'm not distracted by it.
I was like, they're literally both standing the exact same way throughout the entire movie.
They both do that thing where they avoid human contact by turning their heads, and it comes from a different place with each character, I think, which is kind of interesting. Look, can we talk about Eddie Redmayne a little bit?
Okay.
I didn't love Newt in the first movie. Actually, let me walk that back. When I first saw Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, I enjoyed it. I had a fun time, but I walked out of it being like, I don't really care about this movie as much as I think I'm going to care about the series as a whole.
Because of your lack of connection with Newt Scamander?
Yeah, I just didn't care about Newt that much. Now, I rewatched it a couple days before we saw the sequel. I actually found that I liked it a lot more that time watching it.
Okay.
I think when the first time I saw it, I just kind of fit Newt in this box of being like he just seemed like he didn't care about anything outside of himself and his creatures. And then I was kind of like, why does he care about Jacob and Tina? I don't get it. It doesn't. I didn't find that. I think the second time watching it, I found it. I think I bought into it more. I think that he's just one of those people that his whole life, he's been told that he's an outsider and that he's strange, so he just has a hard time letting people in. But he's the kind of person that when he lets you in, it's a strong connection. And I think the plot line with him saving the girl, trying and failing to save a girl in the first movie that he talks about, who was an obscurus, and that's why he wanted to save Credence so bad, because in the end he does really care about people. He's just withdrawn, and he is a super weird dude.
So what do you think are the differences in the character of Newt Scamander versus Harry Potter?
So I kind of brought up the similarities when we were talking about it very early on in this movie, in Crimes of Grindelwald, in the writing of the script, and something that Dumbledore says to Newt, I thought directly correlated him to Harry. And I'm trying to remember what the quote was, but it was something along the lines of, "You do what is right because it's right." And I was like, that is a conversation. You could rip Eddie Redmayne out of that scene and put Daniel Radcliffe in it, and that could have been a conversation between Dumbledore and Harry.
Exactly.
It's the exact same sort of. I don't know if purity is the right word, but it's the Gryffindor quality. Even though Eddie Redmayne or Newt isn't a Gryffindor, it's this it's just this goodness to both of the characters.
What is Newt?
Newt is a Hufflepuff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just this quality of goodness that's in both characters, and is kind of weird that they both have it, because both of their upbringings were kind of not good.
Yeah, they didn't have examples.
Yeah, they didn't have the examples of that goodness. It's just innately in them. Yeah. Harry more so, I think. We don't know enough about Newt. I think Newt was bullied, and he has a strained relationship with his brother. But Harry, we know, lived a horrible life growing up because of his his Muggle family hated him. But when you talk about comparing and contrasting Harry and Newt, you want to know about like the differences?
Yeah. So what do you think are the differences?
Well, I think Harry's a jock. It's funny if you look at Harry Potter from like if you said let's change Hogwarts to a normal school, Harry is a star athlete who skates by without trying in school and gets away with trouble all the time.
True.
Harry's kind of an asshole jock.
If he were playing football, what position do you think
he'd be the quarterback?
You think he'd be the quarterback?
Yeah, because he's the seeker. He's the most important player on the team.
Okay. But all right.
I'm not talking in terms of physical stature. I'm talking in terms of character.
Okay.
He maybe doesn't have the he's like a Matt Saracen quarterback, not a Jason Street quarterback, if that makes sense.
Okay,
talk about Friday Night Lights.
All right, that might okay. I can see where you're going. I would say that he would be like a wide receiver.
Also makes sense, okay, especially because they literally talk about him being fast.
Yeah,
in the books.
But yeah, I feel like
he doesn't have the ego of a wide receiver, though.
Huh?
He doesn't have the ego of a
I don't feel
wide.
Like you have to have an ego to be a wide receiver.
Wide receiver is the most classically egotistical position in football.
Yeah, but you don't have to have it though.
He'd be a slot receiver, is what you're saying.
He'd be a slot receiver. But he'd be like the best person.
He'd
on
be
the
Wes
team.
Welker.
He'd be Wes Welker, but like he'd be the best receiver on the team.
He'd run the best routes and he'd have the best hands.
Yeah.
But he'd make the least explosive plays.
But he would always win the games.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see either. But yeah, I think that's, but if you ripped Newt and put him in a real world school, he'd be, the science nerd or something,
Right.
He'd be in a biology club or something while, Harry's running around, everyone loving him because he's a sports hero.
Right. And I think Harry's a little bit more extroverted that way. Like he's not,
which is weird because Harry isn't extroverted. He has two friends.
I would say he's
just more extroverted than
more
Newt.
extroverted than Newt because Newt he isolates from himself.
Yeah, they're both super introverted characters. And Harry's thing is he doesn't want the spotlight. Is kind of how that's always. He doesn't like having it on him. It just is because of who he is. Mm-hmm. They kind of hinted at that a little bit with Newt too. There was that one kind of throwaway line where the dude who helped him get out of the country with the portkey, the dirty looking dude with the pot, he said something like he raised the price, and he was like, "Oh, that's the price for fame, Mr. Scamander." And I was like, "Newt's famous. It's so weird."
But
you don't think of him as being famous.
But he's famous because he's a criminal. In that context,
he's not a criminal in Britain. No, he's famous because his brother's a highly ranked Auror. He's like the right-hand man to the head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement.
Okay.
The guy that looks like Mark Rylance and isn't Mark Rylance. And he's famous because of his book. People are like, "You're a freak. You wrote this weird book about magical creatures and they're all dangerous. Why do you love them so much?" Like he has this weird pariah syndrome about him.
Wait,
as a
so
character.
he already wrote the book before?
Yeah. I think they said something about how the book released in between movies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, in between the first movie.
Because there's like 9 months, I think, in between movies. Yeah.
Okay. All right. That makes sense then. Because I remember in the first movie, at the end, he says that he's going to write a book about.
Well, that's where
which ends up becoming
the character in terms of when we didn't know anything about the Fantastic Beasts movies, we knew about Newt Scamander because Harry has a textbook called Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them by Newt Scamander.
Yeah.
Trying to think if there's other things I wanted to point out. Oh, I did want to. You kind of talked about, the fan service and the difference between the member berry kind of there's no point to it and when there's something to it in terms of, deriving plot threads or something. I think there's a scene that simultaneously builds character for Newt, Lita, Dumbledore, and in hindsight, Remus Lupin, which I think is so cool. Lupin being Harry's Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher in the third movie. There's a scene where we see a flashback to when Newt is in school and Dumbledore is his Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher. And they do the Boggart lesson that they did in the third movie. And I just thought it was so cool.
Right.
The idea that not only did we learn Newt's fear of the desk, and that was a funny bit, and then we were terrified by the ominous figure that Lita saw and we couldn't tell what it was. And we sort of saw Dumbledore as a teacher, which was cool because you don't really see any of that when he's the headmaster. You don't really see him as a teacher as much. But also we enhanced upon the character of Lupin by showing how he clearly went through the same lesson as with Dumbledore, and he took that and he made it his own. And I just think that's so cool to see that in hindsight. I just love that.
Yeah, like connecting those threads.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, okay, that's a backstory that existed that
We just didn't even.
Do you feel like it's lazy at all?
No, I think it enhances the characters.
I agree with you that it enhances the characters, and I think that it's an incredible plot device. And it's a really good way to have exposition.
So do you mean
for
lazy in the sense of you didn't come up with another unique lesson idea?
Maybe, but like literally, like the construction of the scene itself.
It's like the exact same almost.
Is the exact
They don't
same.
have the wacky record player though.
No. But
Lupin
like
has
it
the
literally,
record player.
literally, like both of the scenes end on a character seeing their own fear, and it's ominous. It's an ominous white thing that you can't understand. That you don't really understand.
Yeah, you can't tell Lupin is a moon unless you already know it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a really good device. You know what I mean? Like, so when I was watching it, I wasn't like, oh, this shit again.
Yeah.
Like, it was just, it's cool. It's a really, it's a fun thing to see. Like,
It's just like, it's such, like, just served up on a platter ways to get character information. Just the idea that the creature gives your greatest fear, and it's just here's character information, just thrusted at you so easily with that idea.
Yeah.
Do
you want to talk about the twist?
Yeah, let's talk about the twist. So, part of the whole plot of the movie, for those who watch these and don't watch the movies for some reason, that we're trying to figure out who Credence's parents are, and it's being hinted at that there are rumors. Everyone keeps saying there's rumors that Credence is a Lestrange. He is Leda's half brother.
Rumors within the story itself.
Yes. That is important to us because Leda keeps talking about how her brother died as a baby and is adamant about that being true. So we go about thinking that, Leda's going to be surprised to find out her brother survived and, she'll be happy about it or something. Nope. That doesn't happen. The first thing I'll point out, we go through, I will say, I think was a really cool scene of exposition was the way they used that family tree thing. When Leda explained her family tree, I just thought it was really sad. She said, my father had a family tree, and it literally magically started growing a family tree. And it showed pictures of all the men, and she said the women of the family were just displayed as flowers. I just thought it was so sad. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was just another step in just making us realize how horrible her dad was as a person.
Right. Like I felt like it was so it's so sad and so compelling because it's like a weird bittersweet kind of perspective on like a misogynist philosophy.
Yeah.
To view women as flowers.
To be seen and not heard.
Yeah. Seen and not heard, and they're beautiful but useless.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like it's like when someone tries to say that like, oh, they're colorblind, like I'm colorblind, I don't see color. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, that's fucking still racist.
Yeah.
Like I understand your intention, and you're trying to say that like the color doesn't matter, and you still treat people with the same type of respect, no matter what their color is. But you should see color. I mean, like that you're being proactively oblivious if you don't see color. But that sort of like well-intentioned but still fucked up perspective is something that's like really interesting. Yeah. And it's like really quickly like hinted at. Mm-hmm. Within her family with like the whole Rose thing. I thought that was really cool. I thought it was the
visual effect was
cool.
It kind of harkened back to in the 7th movie of Harry Potter when they told the story of the 3 brothers, how they did a cool visual aspect. Obviously this didn't last as long or have as much work done in post, like of the whole inky story thing. But I thought it kind of reminded me of that in a way, of a cool visual representation of an idea. Mm-hmm. But yeah, getting to the twist, we find out by the end that because of Leda telling the story about how she killed her brother, she didn't murder him or anything. She made a mistake as a child and swapped babies. It's a weird story, but you buy into it. You're like, okay, I get it. Mm-hmm. So the real brother drowned in a shipwreck. Credence was the baby she switched. It just so happens that according to Gellert Grindelwald, he is a Dumbledore. How? Hell if I know, dude. That was like the thing when I walked. This was me after the movie. I was shook. Mm-hmm. I was sitting in the seat, trying to wrap my head around how it was possible. I was like doing math in my head, and I was like, because we know, because J.K. is so thorough, we know timeline. Timeline is thoroughly thought out. In this movie, Dumbledore's 46 years old. We know when his parents both died. Now, he doesn't have to be both of their kid. That's, his dad went to jail well before his mother died. It could be another dude's kid, but then he wouldn't technically be a Dumbledore, so that's weird. But the youngest that that Credence could be and be Dumbledore's brother is 28 years old. There's no way in hell he's 28.
Right.
There's no way. But I shared my initial theory was this one that I shared with you after we saw it. It's kind of confusing, and you have to keep so. Dumbledore's sister was a pretty big plot point in the Harry Potter, especially in the last book. We learned a lot about Dumbledore's backstory in the last book, in the last 2 movies. We learned that he had a sister who died when he was 17 years old. We learned that sister was ill her whole life and was never allowed to go to school and was never really allowed outside very much. And his mother, Kendra, was always taking care of her. And that there was a point where some Muggle boys picked on Ariana, his sister, when she was a girl, and that's how Dumbledore's father got sent to Azkaban. His father attacked these Muggles boys, so they sent him away to Azkaban. So now it's Dumbledore, Albus, his brother Aberforth, their sister Ariana, and their mom Kendra. Well, not too much later, Kendra passes away. And there's always just these rumors.
Kendra is the mom?
Kendra's the mother.
See, I'm already
it's hard to keep up with. We know that, or we don't know what's wrong with Ariana. The rumors swirl around the wizarding world of what's wrong with the Dumbledore family, blah blah blah. Meanwhile, Albus Dumbledore is this prodigy of a wizard. He's super famous before he even graduates from Hogwarts, and it just so happens he spends a summer right after his mother passes away. Gellert Grindelwald comes to Godric's Hollow where they live, and they become friends. Uh-huh. And they share these radical ideas, and he is seduced by Grindelwald's presence into thinking his ideas are right, of the greater good in this.
You don't have to say presence. You can say wiener.
Yeah. And then there's a big fight where Aberforth gets mad at Albus. He says, "You're neglecting our sister, and you want to run off and take over the world with your boyfriend," and they get in a fight. The 3 of them get in a fight. Mm-hmm. And in that fight, Ariana dies. Now, why is this important to what's happening now and who Credence is? It's not confirmed, but because of the first Fantastic Beasts movie, it is assumed that Ariana was an Obscurus, the same thing that Credence is. That welled up magical power that is suppressed and then kind of explodes out in moments of stress. My theory is that when Ariana died, her essence, the Obscurus, moved to someone else and took over another child. So that would give you maybe another 9 years, I think, of leeway. I think she was 9 when she died. Okay, so now he can be 19. That fits.
Right.
Credence is easily 19 years old.
Right.
I think Ezra Miller said in the first movie he was 18.
Right.
So I think that's super cool. If that's what happens, it's just super interesting. Another theory I've seen is that maybe he's Aberforth's son, mm-hmm. but I don't think that's anywhere near as cool.
Right. Or the other theory that Grindelwald's just lying to him.
Yeah, or is Grindelwald just lying?
Yeah.
But they use the whole Phoenix bit to sort of persuade us into thinking it's real.
Which is ultra kind of
That would be the lamest thing. If he was if he's lying a little bit, cool. If he's just lying overall, that'd be like if Kylo was lying about Rey's parents not being anyone. It'd be like, well, why did you even do it in the first place? You know what I mean?
I wouldn't say that's the same thing.
You don't think so?
No, because Kylo's saying you're nothing. That is him. It's like the difference between coincidence putting you into conflict versus coincidence bringing you out of conflict. Mm-hmm. I would say it's kind of similar to that.
See that. I can
just because it's a coincidence, doesn't mean that it's a bad story technique. But as long as it's used in the right way.
Okay, I can agree with that. What your initial reaction to Grindelwald saying your name is Aurelius Dumbledore? Are you into the idea of him being related to Dumbledore? The reason I ask this is because I saw online reactions being like, just no, just please, no, come on. And I was like, I think that's fucking awesome.
I think people are ultra precious about shit. Mm-hmm. I think people are like, Oh, so I think people might be thinking that they're just shoehorning, like, oh, he's a Dumbledore. Like, that's cool, right? They think that that's what's happening, but I think it's more compelling than that.
Yeah. Yeah, I was blasted and surprised and super into it. It just makes me that much more interested in the upcoming films. I was like, oh, give me more.
Well, and it raises the stakes for the fight between Dumbledore and Grindelwald too.
Yeah, because not only now is it just a fight over the fate of, the wizarding world and this just young boy's soul, but now it's your brother. It's just that much more. Yeah, I was really into that. Oh, I was also really into the one of the things going into the movie was, why can't Dumbledore just fight Grindelwald now? I was interested in how they did that. That little blood pact thing I thought was super cool.
Right. It's interesting, but then now they have to figure out
how to destroy it,
how to break the blood pact.
To break the blood pact. Yeah, I thought that whole scene, I love the Mirror of Erised scene when Dumbledore looked into it and he saw. Because I think that's interesting.
That's another like good plot device.
Yeah, the Mirror of Erised. Yeah, just certainly. Something that you look in
finding
and shows
someone
your truest desire. It's so much revealed to a character.
Yeah, like if you're writing a character, you should know what their fear is and what their desires are.
Yeah. So and I think that's an interesting scene because you look in and what does Dumbledore see when he looks in a mirror that shows you your greatest desire? It shows himself doing it as a boy. Is his greatest desire to return to that time in his life? Is his greatest desire to do that again?
Doing the blood pact?
Yeah, it shows he puts his hand on the mirror and then young Grindelwald's hand is on the mirror. And then when we transition back to Dumbledore, it's young Dumbledore. And then they show the blood pact scene. So I think it just kind of opens up these kinds of, what does Dumbledore want? And my guess would be to go back to that time and do things right. Maybe would be Dumbledore's greatest desire. I think maybe in his mind, if he could go back to that moment, that he could do it a different way. And maybe, Grindelwald doesn't become the monster that he is today, and maybe his sister never dies, and he can fix everything. If he could go back to that moment. And famously, when he's an old man, he still looks in that mirror. We don't know what he sees as an old man, but we do know that he tells Harry he sees himself holding a pair of woolen socks, and we know he's lying.
Right.
I think it's really interesting. I thought that was really cool. I could talk about this movie in this world for hours. But
okay, yeah. So the Mirror of Erised, does your desire can change throughout your life, right?
Sure, absolutely.
Does what you see in the mirror change ever?
I would say most likely, certainly. I would think if your desires change. There's no reason that your
even in the first movie, like the very first in Sorcerer's Stone, fucking Harry sees his parents the first time, but when he's actually in the whatever,
when he goes to
is that in the
Sorcerer's Stone, but Dumbledore put magic on the mirror. Okay. Dumbledore did some magic-y stuff. He trapped the stone in the mirror, and the only person who could get it out is someone who didn't intend to use it.
Right.
So that's kind of, is the mirror still the same? We don't know. But I think if you put me in front of that mirror when I was a kid, it probably would have showed me like playing football or something. If you put it in front of me now, that's not what I would see. I certainly think that it could change.
Yeah. I don't have anything.
Yeah, I could go on and on, but
this
I think
is by far our longest spoiler episode.
I think in terms of this movie, I think we kind of touched on the important stuff. I really enjoyed it, and I'm even more looking forward to the movies that come, and specifically Jude Law.
Yeah, and for those that aren't huge Harry Potter fans, and say if your significant other or friend is a huge Harry Potter nerd and they want to go out and see this movie, and you're kind of like, no, like not another Harry Potter movie. It goes down really easy. It goes down smooth and it's enjoyable, and you'll leave this movie feeling very wholesome. I would say
entertained.
It's not a hard watch at all.
No.
So don't be too tentative,
and don't watch this movie for the first time like checking your phone and stuff though, because you might end up lost by the end. You'll be confused as to why everyone is there.
Sure.
But this has been our spoiler episode for Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald. He's Chris, I'm Kyle. Catch him, Chris Michael Stott, for his website. Chris Michael Stott on Instagram. Find me, Davinwell25 on Twitter and Instagram. Find the show, TCAX Pod, The Chris and Kyle Show. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, podcasting platforms. Like, share, rate, review, all that fun stuff. Come back next week when we will air our poll winner for the month as a Thanksgiving celebration. The poll is going to close on Monday, so get your votes in if you haven't, between Creed 2 and Ralph Breaks the Internet, the sequel off.
Who's winning right now?
It's like dead heat.
Oh, damn.
Yeah. Like, I haven't looked at the YouTube. I don't know if anyone's interacted on the polls on YouTube, because if you're on YouTube, you can do it. But I know from Facebook and Twitter, they're like, I think it's 13-13 or something like that. They're tight 50-50 race right now. Anything else? I think with that being said, we are out.
We out. Stay weird.
Peace.